On November 30, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Finland with a force so overwhelming on paper that Stalin reportedly expected the campaign finished within 2 weeks. In Moscow, Soviet military planners reviewed the invasion timeline with total confidence, the disparity in raw numbers making the outcome seem, to them, already decided. An endless column of Soviet armor and infantry crosses the frontier, stretching back along a single narrow road further than the eye can follow. A Red Army soldier's face carries the specific confidence of a man who has been told, correctly by every conventional measure, that this war is already won. Finland's border defenses, by comparison, are thin, a small force preparing to meet an army many times its size. Finnish officers study a map showing the true scale of the disparity, roughly 300,000 defenders against well over 1 million invading soldiers. The same frame holds both forces at once, the overwhelming mass of the Soviet invasion and the comparatively tiny Finnish defense, side by side at different distances. A Finnish soldier's face, wrapped in white winter gear, carries no visible fear, only calm, settled resolve. The Finnish frontier itself is revealed in full, deep snow, dense forest, a landscape that looks, at first glance, like the kind of terrain that favors whoever has the most men and machines to throw at it. From a wide diorama view, the entire frontier is shown at once, both forces positioned across a landscape that is about to prove far less favorable to raw numbers than either side initially assumed. The Finnish winter itself becomes a weapon, temperatures regularly falling below -40 degrees, deep snow, and short daylight hours that neither side can control. Finnish ski troops of the 1939-40 Winter War era move through this landscape in white camouflage suits, rifles slung, using skis to travel faster through deep snow than any mechanized Soviet vehicle can manage. A pair of skis and ski poles rests against a snowbank, simple equipment that, in this terrain, outperforms tanks. A squad of Finnish ski troops moves in loose formation through a birch forest, using the trees themselves as cover from any distant observation. A Finnish soldier's face is almost entirely hidden beneath a white camouflage hood, only his eyes visible against the snow. Soviet soldiers of the era, by contrast, visibly struggle against conditions their equipment and training never adequately prepared them for. A frostbitten hand grips a rifle, the specific, individual cost of an army sent into extreme cold without the clothing or preparation this climate demands. A long column of Soviet trucks and infantry sits motionless, stuck on a single narrow road with dense forest pressing in on both sides and nowhere else to go. Finnish ski troops observe this column from a concealed position in the tree line, unseen and unhurried. From a wide diorama view, the contrast becomes the entire story in a single frame, a mobile, adapted Finnish force watching an immobile, strung-out Soviet column that has no way to defend itself from what is coming. A map-style diorama illustrates the Finnish motti tactic: directly isolated pockets of Soviet forces cut off from each other along a single road and surrounded individually. Finnish troops of the era hold positions in concealment along the road's tree line, patient and unhurried. The Soviet column sits halted, vehicles and soldiers bunched together in exactly the kind of density that Finnish tactics are designed to punish. A Finnish soldier's hand grips a rifle, aimed from cover, steady and deliberate. The full ambush position is revealed, Finnish troops positioned on both sides of the road, the Soviet column trapped between them with no room to maneuver. A glass bottle fitted with a cloth wick, the Molotov cocktail, named with deliberate sarcasm after the Soviet foreign minister, is held ready by a Finnish soldier of the era. At the Alko State distillery, converted for wartime production, crates of these same bottles sit lined up in rows, mass-produced for a purpose the factory was never originally built for. A Soviet tank of the era sits stopped on the road, isolated from supporting infantry and completely vulnerable to close attack. A Finnish soldier approaches the tank's blind spot, cocktail in hand, the vehicle's design offering no protection against an attacker this close. From a wide diorama view, the aftermath is shown, the road littered with abandoned Soviet equipment, the surrounding snow undisturbed, exactly the kind of silence that follows a motti attack once it has run its course. Near Suomussalmi, 2 full Soviet divisions of the era find themselves strung along a single road, exactly the configuration that Finnish tactics are built to exploit. A Finnish commanding officer of the era reviews the encirclement plan, the strategy already proven effective in smaller engagements across the front. Finnish forces cut the road at multiple points simultaneously, dividing the Soviet column into isolated, unsupportable segments. A frozen Soviet soldier's face, documented in multiple historical accounts of the battle's aftermath, reflects the scale of loss caused as much by the cold as by direct combat. Miles of abandoned Soviet vehicles and equipment stretch along the forest road, evidence of a defeat far larger than the Soviet planners in Moscow had accounted for. Finnish soldiers of the era move methodically through a captured section of the former Soviet column. The scale of the defeat becomes visible in a single wide frame, equipment and vehicles stretching into the distance in numbers that shocked observers on both sides of the war. A captured Soviet map or document lies displayed, era-accurate paper and ink recording plans that never accounted for what actually happened here. Finnish troops rest in a birch forest encampment following the battle, the immediate danger past for the moment. From a wide diorama pullback, the full battlefield at Suomussalmi is revealed from above, the road itself a visible scar cut through an otherwise undisturbed frozen wilderness. Along the Kollaa River front, a quiet snow-covered forest clearing holds the specific kind of stillness that will define the next 100 days. Simo Häyhä, a Finnish soldier of the Winter War era, stands in a plain white snow camouflage suit, his weathered face calm and entirely unremarkable, exactly the point. His rifle rests nearby, a plain Finnish M/28-30, fitted with standard iron sights and no telescopic scope of any kind. Häyhä is shown packing snow into his own mouth, a documented detail specifically intended to prevent his breath from producing visible vapor in the freezing air. He lies position prone in a concealed snow hide, his rifle resting across a small parapet built entirely from packed snow. His eye rests steady at the iron sight, focused and unmoving. Beyond his position, the distant tree line and open field stretch out, the exact sightline he watched for 100 days. His face remains calm and still, eyes scanning the distance without any unnecessary movement of the head. His gloved hand rests steady on the rifle's stock, patient beyond any ordinary description of patience. From a wide diorama view, the entire Kollaa front sector is revealed at once. Häyhä's position a single small, static figure within an enormous winter landscape that gives no visual indication of what is watching from within it. A snow-covered ridgeline marks the position Häyhä occupied for weeks at a time. He builds a small parapet from packed snow directly in front of his position, low enough to remain unnoticed, high enough to break up his silhouette completely. The packed snow and ice itself forms a natural barrier of concealment, indistinguishable from the surrounding terrain. Soviet soldiers of the era patrol nearby, entirely unaware of the concealed position, observing their movement. A Soviet officer of the era studies a map, marking reported losses to an unseen and unlocated threat. The map itself carries handwritten notations referencing a danger nobody on the Soviet side has been able to identify or counter. Soviet soldiers advance cautiously across open snow, visibly wary in a way that reflects growing awareness of a threat they cannot see. A Finnish officer reviews Häyhä's reported tally, his expression carrying quiet astonishment at numbers that are difficult to process even from his own side of the war. A tally sheet or logbook page, era-accurate in handwriting and paper texture, records the growing count. From a wide diorama view, the Kollaa front is shown as a still, tense tableau, both sides positioned across the frozen landscape, the danger implied entirely through composition rather than any visible action. By March of 1940, in the war's final days, the winter battlefield along the same front looks almost identical to how it appeared months earlier. Häyhä remains in his usual concealed position, the same calm, unremarkable presence that has defined his entire 100 days at Kollaa. A Soviet soldier of the era, positioned at a distance, holds a raised rifle, the specific chance encounter that 100 days of extraordinary discipline had, until this moment, allowed Häyhä to avoid. The two positions are shown together within the same still frame, the distance between them emphasized by the composition. Häyhä's face, in the moment of impact, is shown through stillness and expression alone, no graphic detail, only the specific quiet that follows a devastating and sudden change. His rifle rests, dropped in the snow beside him. Finnish soldiers of the era reach his position, arriving to carry him to safety. He is carried on an improvised stretcher across the snow, the same white winter landscape that had concealed him now witness to his evacuation. His face, pale and still, eyes closed, is shown wrapped in field bandaging, respectful in detail, without graphic depiction. From a wide diorama view, a field hospital tent stands visible in the distance, small figures moving toward it across the open snow. In a formal negotiating room, Finnish and Soviet officials of the era sit at a long table, the war's final terms being settled. A Finnish diplomat signs the Moscow Peace Treaty, March 13, 1940, the document formally ending 105 days of war. The treaty itself is shown in detail, era-accurate paper, official seals, and signatures marking the war's conclusion. A map illustrates the territory of Karelia being ceded to the Soviet Union under the treaty's terms. Finnish civilians of the era load belongings onto carts, preparing to leave land their families have held for generations. A long column of Finnish refugees moves away from the newly redrawn border, carrying what they can. A single family's belongings sit piled on a horse-drawn cart, the individual, human scale of a much larger territorial loss. The abandoned farmland of Karelia stretches out, empty homes visible against the snow. Finnish soldiers of the era stand at the new borderline, looking back at land that is no longer part of their country. From a wide diorama view, the full redrawn map reveals the scale of the territorial loss, costly, but leaving Finland itself still standing as a sovereign nation. In Geneva, the League of Nations Assembly Hall holds delegates of the era in formal session, debating the Soviet Union's invasion of Finland. A delegate rises to cast a vote on the Soviet Union's expulsion from the League, a rare and significant diplomatic rebuke. A formal vote tally document, era-accurate in style, records the decision. Swedish volunteer soldiers of the era arrive to join the Finnish cause, drawn by a resistance that has become an unexpected symbol across Scandinavia. International volunteers are equipped with winter gear alongside Finnish troops, preparing to join a fight that has captured attention far beyond Finland's own borders. Newspaper printing presses run in a European city, producing headlines about Finland's extraordinary resistance against overwhelming odds. A period newspaper front page, era-accurate typeface and layout, displays the story to readers far from the actual front. In a Soviet military academy, officers of the era review the war's lessons in a formal interior setting. Red Army officers study reports on Finnish tactics, their expressions grave and studious rather than dismissive. From a wide diorama view, the broader map of Europe places the Winter War as one small but genuinely consequential piece of a much larger conflict about to begin. In a Finnish military hospital, rows of recovering soldiers of the era lie in quiet convalescence. Häyhä himself recovers in a hospital bed, his facial wound healed but visibly scarred, shown with respect rather than graphic detail. His hands rest calmly on a blanket, still and settled. Years later, Häyhä is shown as an older man, in a quiet Finnish farmhouse setting, dressed in ordinary post-war civilian clothing rather than any uniform. His weathered older face carries the same calm, unassuming quality that defined him during the war itself, no medals, no uniform, nothing to mark him as exceptional at a glance. His old rifle sits preserved in a museum display case, the plain iron sights exactly as they were during the war, no scope ever added. A modern Finnish museum interior holds present-day visitors viewing the display with quiet interest. An informational placard beside the rifle records the era-accurate details of the weapon and the man who carried it. The Kollaa River landscape is shown peacefully in the present day, the terrain itself unchanged by the 80 years since the fighting that took place across it. From a final wide diorama pullback, the peaceful present-day landscape gives way slowly to reveal the full historical battlefield sector from above, the entire Winter War front visible in one last still, static tableau, exactly as it once stood.